Basically, when I came into this community, I was about 19 years old. I came from a pretty close-minded area of Texas where, it was pretty much unheard of to be anything but the contemporary populace. It's exactly, it was the not necessarily the American dream because it is the Rio Grande Valley, but things were a little different, and it's easy to be. It's either stone or be stoned in a huge way, and I knew since I was younger that there was something about me that was most pretty different, and everybody has their group of friends that they talk to about things when they're younger. And I was always told that there was something that I needed to maybe seek some sort of help. But as I got older, I landed in Austin back in the late '80s, early '90s, and ran into a group of people that were my age, that were also pretty much of the same culture, which I felt at home. To me, it was instant family, and it was something that I really was grateful for. But back then we didn't have what my or our organization has for people coming into the community, and that's somebody to teach you, somebody to tell you what to look out for, somebody that's going to help you fall into your roles that you are intrinsic to, and gracefully. For that matter. There still lacks a lot of that in the culture right now. There's way too much of the negative element, gaslighters, vultures, people who take advantage of those that are new to the community but don't necessarily know their rights or as far as what they're allowed to do or not allowed to do, and people take the domination thing and they take advantage of it, and that's a scary thing. And those are pretty much the elements that I've been fighting against, and been on top of that advocating the exposure of who we are. Just recently I started writing a book. It's going to be called Rise and Shine. It's basically, the purpose of it is to educate the public as well as people from our community. The saying goes, what people don't know scares them, and that's always been the factor. And so you've got these the benevolent flock that transforms into the lynch mob mentality, and people are ridiculed, they're judged, and there's other factors that have necessarily not made our paths that easy, but it's a lot easier now. With acknowledgement that we do exist. And there is a certain psychological diagram, certain traits that that are significant to us. That it's a pattern, and we have like minds. Definitely. We harbor those things. We definitely show it, and there's also people that are in the middle of the scale. Everybody's got some sort of a desire or some sort of urge or draw to our practices in some way or another. They're just not allowed to speak about it, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to change. The whole purpose that I started an organization probably about, was it like 7 years ago, called the Tribe, or the Camino Tribe Progressive, and this was an effort to advocate openly, as I've done public speaking, podium, talk radio, that sort of thing, in educating the public and letting them know, this is who we are, and there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing that you can do to change that, and please. Let's cut the stigma. Let's break the judgment, cycle, and let us move on. You don't necessarily have to embrace us, but please accept us. And that's that's been my mission, my goal for the last 15 years, I guess. And there's always that negative element. There's always some sort of abrasive factor that's going to keep you from doing something that you really feel strongly about. And I've ran into those. I mean, some you can laugh it off and walk on, like rumors, especially being in somewhat kind of a high profile, I guess if you'd call it, in this town, has brought me a lot of negative just reactions from people, just a lot of rumors and stuff like that, which I finally, years ago, after trying to run around and defend myself, realized that I can't go around changing everybody's mind, because that's a lot of time that I'll spend that I'll never get back, when I could be spending it doing other things that are most definitely productive and progressive for our community. The book that I have coming out, it's called Rise and Shine. Basically, the whole effort is to do exactly that. I mean, I touch on everything from education to the government to the ideology of the stigma. Some of it being government, some of it being the church, and a lot of it being the psychiatric community, unfortunately. Freud had a lot to do with, putting people from our community in a category known as paraphilics, where we would be in the same class as a pedophile or a rapist, somebody who has a severe sexual and violent dysfunction, that plagues them. And that was probably the worst blow that our community could have ever had.
Specifically in the community, one of the big things is, of course, permission, mutual respect, and setting boundaries and things.
Absolutely.
And that's one of those things that you don't know that if you're not part of that. You just see this hyper...
You see whips and chains, you see people in black.
Yes.
You see somebody dominating a submissive person, and so you assume that there's some sort of dysfunction with the, first of all, the person who's being dominated, person who likes to, as the dynamics are no longer black and white, underneath our umbrella, we've got so many different, roles, pet play, switches, the DDLG, which is Daddy Dom, Little Girl, that's one of the big ones, because people assume that, since one person is playing the role of a child, the other person is playing the role of a nurturer, and there's a sexual element involved, that there's some sort of sick pedophile, resonation in there, and it's not. I mean, it's one person who is going to their happy place within closed doors and rushing off all the negative, energy that comes from people out in the real world, and they're within their home, and they go back to that age where they're most happy, and they have a nurturer who is willing to, be there and be their support and treat them like a little princess or a prince. I mean, that's all it is. It's two consenting adults of age. For someone to classify it as pedophilia is just completely wrong. So, I mean, back to my point, I mean, there's so much going on under the umbrella that I can see where it'd be pretty hard for people to accept it, or the government to actually legitimately recognize it as a culture, of like minds. I mean, okay, if you let's say you take a redhead from every country around the world and you put them all in one spot, you got a bunch of redheads hanging out together. Half of them don't understand what the next guy is talking about because they speak different languages. There's that communication barrier. But the point is you've got a little bit of, a small fraction of the population is out there who are intrinsic to our practices, to the roles, and are essentially, looking towards us or this culture to find their utopia. Now, the thing is, there's so many people out there. I mean, there's the ethnocentric element that it really, is hard to break, especially in this country. I mean, the U.S. is so bad about it. I mean, the government has a subtle, influence, in inspiring people to judge, to ridicule, and just to condemn. That it happens with race, it happens with subcultures, it happens with everybody. And just here we are, 2019, and okay, the gay community has come out, and they're legalized their marriage, and it's the same thing. We would like to come out. I mean, I would like to see people being able to exist and identify without fear of that ridicule or that condemnation, and essentially be recognized without having to lose their jobs or their kids, or be chastised in public because of it. I mean, that's duality is really a dysfunctional, unhealthy way of living. If you have to hide who you are within closed doors, and lead the vanilla life, or as I call the contemporary populace, it really hinders your progression. And for people to try to stop subcultures from living the way that they feel just, is hindering evolution in a great way. I mean, evolution is not only adaptation, but it's progression of the mind, it's progression of intelligence, and that's basically who we are. And there's been, the case studies have been done regarding this, and I'll mention this really quick. People who are, the psychiatric community has recognized that people within this culture are more apt to try new things, experience new things for the sake of wisdom or enlightenment over, other, I would say, reverse repressed cultures. I mean, or being the mainstream contemporary populace. And so, if you take that into mind, and especially as I've recoined the BDSM community, the edge culture, and you'll hear me mention this a lot or write about it if you've read anything that I've written that's been published, you'll know that I've recoined a lot of terminology that's really needed updating, and holds so much of a stigma that needs to be changed. I mean, it's from Freud, classifying the BDSM community as being dysfunctional, emotionally, mentally, so on and so forth, and to the church, and the taboo element, and calling us immoral or unethical or unorthodox. I mean, there's just so much that we've got to get over, and I mean, it's not going to happen with me just writing a book. It's going to have to take a whole, collective of people that really sincerely believe in themselves and believe that they need to be freed. And so that's the whole purpose of my efforts. As far as education goes, I mean, with this book, I mean, I'm educating the public. I'm letting them know who we are. I mean, if they need to know specifics about our practices, because they see one thing and immediately it looks like another. An orange might look like an apple, but in this case, an orange is an orange and an apple is an apple. You see a person that's receiving impact play, goes back to the whole whips and chains, perception of one person beating another. I mean, if you really look into it, impact play is a very therapeutic release for everyday stress, for things that we go through. It's a way to free ourselves and to release and to breathe. I mean, we're not killing each other, we're not hurting each other in a permanent way. We are actually very consenting, and also our community takes a level of communication that's beyond any other culture, any other relationship that I have ever known. And that's another term that I've coined is trivium clavis, which is means the three keys. And the three keys is what you need for any relationship to exist, whether it be a monogamous relationship or countries. You know, you've got communication, trust, and honesty. If you don't have those three things, you have no business being in a relationship of any kind. And that's the unfortunate part with the divorce rate being 50%. You know, now it's down to 39. I believe the millennials are and
they're not getting married until later, too.
right, exactly. They're not getting married till later. They're making sure their you know their security is set and monetarily sound, and you know that's a great thing. I mean, but if you take these practices that we have and apply them to what's existing now, I'm not going to say you're going to eliminate, that you're going to accomplish world peace or solve the world hunger problem, but I guarantee you it's going to take us a long, long way further in a good direction. And to me, I mean, I think it's worth it. I mean, with everything as fucked up as it is, I mean, I think anything that's a positive step forward is going to help, everyone. I mean, in a great sense. So, that being said, communication, our bonds, our code of ethics, our etiquette, our protocol, everything that has to do with our lifestyle and practices, there's a reason for it, but it's also extremely consensual. And I just read an article today, or actually yesterday, is online arguing with this psychiatrist who just strongly believes that the 50 Shades is some sort of declaration of our independence, which I just thought was fucking hilarious. And so we got into a debate online about this sort of thing, and I had to point out a lot of things. One thing that he did mention was consent is not always consensual, and he started bringing up variables of why consent doesn't work. And I mean, this thing did not hold water. I mean, he was talking about, well, one person has regret and this and that, and one person is intoxicated, which we don't draw any contracts for relationships, and I say contracts because we actually do try to keep everything on, and I'll explain that to you here shortly. Try to keep everything legit and consolidated so that we know exactly what that person is expecting, and we know exactly what that person is consenting to. Now, if we went around trying to vulture people that were drunk so that we can get them to consent to something that they wouldn't normally do, I mean, that doesn't make us who we are. We're a legit community that holds that practice very high. And back to the contract sort of thing, a lot of people still practice what was once called the dungeon contract. I just call it a mutual arrangement that's written down on paper. If you sit down and have the preliminary talks, whether you're getting together with people that you're playing with, in what we call play party situation or scene, or it's a relationship or a prospective relationship, be it submissive under consideration, which is a term that basically means that we're giving this person a chance, and we're trying to figure out if they're the right chemistry or genistry, as I say, genetics and chemistry to actually fall together, or whatever the case may be. You sit down and you talk about these things. You first of all, you've identified. We use titles and classification for the sake of identifying initially. I mean, especially in our culture, you want to know that person's going to be a compatible one. First, there's the physical attraction, and then there's the interest, and then you figure out if there's if you got two dominant people that are trying to get together, want to get together, they better be willing to sacrifice with, by means out of their comfort zone, which isn't healthy either. So I mean, it's everything has to be compatible. And when you sit down with these people and you find out what your desires are, what your expectations are, what your needs are, what the other person, what they expect as well, and you write down those boundaries, what you're consenting to, what your fantasies are, everything from, what your favorite color is to, what time you get up in the morning. It has to be something that has to be expressed on paper in a preliminary, not necessarily on paper, but in a preliminary talk, so that when you go into it, you've already eliminated discomfort. You've eliminated somebody doing something to the other person that is going to completely trigger an emotional response that might be, of a historical trauma emotionally. These are things you want to avoid. I mean, everybody has that sort of thing. I mean, it's human nature. You've gone through some sort of trauma in your life that has scarred you and still resonates, and you want to avoid those things. I mean, we try to, our organization itself tries to incorporate counseling, and we do approach those things, and there are, through cognitive efforts, there's ways to resolve those sort of things. I mean, it just takes commitment, and of course a person submitting to the effort, and willing to learn about it and find out about themselves.